Alright, so for today's video, I'll be showing you how to create this Frostbow asset completely in Blender, step by step. I'll begin by showing you how to create the bow itself, step by step, how to model it from a curve and how to shade it and everything. And then I'll show you the same process for the arrow as well, and also how to create this little special effect here, that little sort of wind aura that's going around the arrow. So I'll be showing you how to do that as well. So without further ado, here we go. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do here is I'm going to delete the default cube because I'm not going to use a normal geometry to build the bow itself. I'm going to use curve objects because curve objects are a lot easier to manipulate when you want to create objects like bows that curve and have these very curvy shapes to them. It'll be a lot easier. And once we're done with shaping them with the curves, then we can convert them into meshes. You'll see how it's done. So what I'll do is I'm going to press Shift A here, and I'm going to add in a curve, Bezier curve, perfect. And then in edit mode, let's see here, edit mode, RX. I'm just going to flip it over like this and turn it vertically like this. And I'm going to move it upwards from its origin point that you can see here. This is the origin point. And the reason why is because if I add a modifier like the mirror modifier, and instead of X, I'll go to Z, you'll notice that the shape at the top will be mirrored at the bottom, and the center point will be the origin point. And so whatever modifications I do at the top here will also be reflected at the bottom. So what I'm trying to do here essentially is I'm going to shape up the curve. So I'm going to play with it here. Every curve point has has handles that you can play with to modify the curve that you want here. So I'm going to move this upwards like this. And this is where you can get a little experimental also with your curves and see what kind of shape you want to give your bow as well. So let's take a look at it here. I'm going to move this a little bit more to the back, and I'm going to move this curve like this here. And I want this to be a little closer to it here. It's a little too much, a little too close. So let's see here. Or maybe let's flip it up like this. I like this a lot more. So this is really where you get to be a little experimental with your bow shapes. And let's see here. What I'd like to do is I'm going to select this curve point and then this curve point, and then I'm going to right click and choose, let's see here, subdivide. And now by adding one more point in the center, I can, modify it a little bit more. So I can take this, for example, let's see here, move it forward a little bit more like this to give the bow a bit more curvature. This is nice. Maybe make this a little smaller, a little closer here. Okay. I like this for the basic shape of the bow, and I'll be using it here. Now, once you have your pretty much your bow curve shape done, what you want to do is give it some sort of volume or shape. And so this is what the bow will look like, but we want to give it some sort of depth. And the way to do this, what I like to do is I'm going to begin by just naming this here. I'm going to give a name here to my bow. Let's see here. And I'm going to name it bow. And then I'm going to create another curve, but this time I'm going to go, instead of Bezier, I'm going to go for circle. And this will be the bow shape. So if I put it on the side here, there we go. And I go back to my bow curve shape. I'll go in right here to the, let's see, is it the data properties tab, and I'm going to go to, let's see here, geometry, bevel. I'm going to select object, and now I can choose an object to create the shape that I want the bow to be in. And with the eyedropper tool here, I'm going to click and choose the Bezier circle. And now because the Bezier circle is a circle, it's a circle shape, that's the shape that my curves are going to take. But I can modify the Bezier circle and therefore modify the shape of my bow. And I'll show you how it's done right now. First things first, I'm going to go here to this Bezier circle. I'm going to name it bow shape. So just to always name it correctly. So bow shape. Go into edit mode and reduce its size a little bit here. Just make sure that when you modify it, always go into edit mode. It'll be better. And you'll see why when we start playing with the, because in edit mode, you can play here with the, as you can see here, when you play with the points. Always make sure to know which point corresponds to which area here of your bow shape. So I'm also just going to switch. I personally don't like to work with the studio lighting in the viewport. I like to play with the matcap. I can view things better this way. And okay, so this is good. It's still a little too big for a bow. And typically bows, let me see here if I switch the scale here like this. They tend to be thinner on the sides and longer here across the width, but thinner in terms of depth like this. And let's scale it down just a little bit more, but not too much, because then we can't see what we're going to be doing. And what I want to do is I want to go back into my bow, curve object, go into edit mode. And I know that this last point of the curve is going to be smaller. So I'm going to press Alt S and give it a smaller shape. I'm going to make this smaller as well. And just by pressing Alt S when selecting a curve point, you can modify the, actual size of your curve within that specific region. So let's see here. There we go. Just like that. So you can get really creative with what you want to do. So I'm going to make this a little bit fatter, a little bit bigger, make this a little thinner here. This will be as thin as possible, just like that. Beautiful. And then what I'm going to do here, because I don't want the bow to be too circular, the bow is made out of ice, right? It's like a frost bow. So I want it to have a bit more of a diamond-like or just, crystal shape because it's closer to ice. So what I'll do is I'll click here with the bow shape, go into edit mode, and I'm going to select all of the points, press V, and change the handle types to vector. Now that it's done through vector, as you can see, it's a lot sharper here. And if I play, for example, with this point, there we go. This is moving the backside. This is moving on the y-axis, this will be the x-axis. Okay, perfect. And so what I want to do here is, actually I'm just going to put a subdivision subsurface. Let's see here, generate subdivision surface. There we go. It'll be easier to see what we're doing by giving it more geometry. And then let's add in, let me see here what we can do. I want to get like a shard-like shape to my bow. So I'm going to go here, select all my points, and then subdivide again as well. So let's see what happens if I play with this here. Okay, I want these two to stick out a little more. So if I take these two, go scale and scale them upwards. Okay, I want to do the same thing for these two at the top. So I'm going to take these two here and these two and these two here because I want them to be symmetrical. And make them go up more like this, get them closer to here. And I want that side here and that side here. Let me just see if I'm getting the shape that I want. And if I take this here or this here, not yet getting what I want. Maybe if I give it a bit more subdivision. Let's see here. Okay, if I take these two here and move them downwards like this. Take these two here and move them up like this on the y-axis upwards. Let's see. Moving this forward a little bit as well. Moving this here. Okay, so what we're going to do too, just to make it easier to look at, I'm going to take this in an object mode, not edit mode, but in object mode. I'm going to rotate it on its x-axis, just like this. This way, if I'm looking forward, as I'm modifying my shape curve, I can see what's happening. Because if I'm looking at it from this perspective, sometimes it's easier to see what's happening on the bow. But just make sure that you're rotating in object mode and not edit mode, because if you rotate it in edit mode, then what happens is you're also modifying the shape on your bow. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to just maybe not scale up, but just, let's see here, scale on the x-axis just a little more. And let's see, if I take the center ones here and move it upwards like this. Now I'm getting shapes I prefer a lot more. It's a little sharper here, but I don't like the fold that we see here on the bow. So I'm going to take the point here and just make it a little thinner. There we go. This is looking much better for me already. This is looking nice. And so what I'm going to do too is I want things to look sharper on, like here it looks a little too smooth for my liking. So what I'd like to do is go here. I'm selecting, just to make it easier for you to see, the last two vertices here of the curve and the last one here, right clicking, going to subdivide. And let's see what kind of effect, it's already getting sharper. If I move those a little lower to the bottom, like this, or move actually this forward up like this, it's looking a little sharper. So I'm going to just scale those down, move this down, and then scale it down until it looks a bit better. What am I getting here? There we go. It's already looking sharper here. I like that. I want to make the same effect at the top here. Select those ones here, right click, subdivide, take these two, move them up as close as possible, then scale them down. There we go. Like this, maybe a little more scale down on the x-axis, just like this. Perfect, and there we go. I'm getting the shape that I'd like for the bow now. As you can see, you've got sharper angles on the bow right here. Should zoom in a little more. And just as a reminder, make sure to have your subdivision on, because if you don't, it won't be as, it's still visible, but not as much. If you put your subdivision up, you can see it a lot more. All right. So now that this is, I'm satisfied with the shape, the next thing that I want to do here is, let's see, I'm going to modify the shape a little more here, make this just a tiny bit thinner. And then what I'd like to do is if I take and sub these two vertices here and subdivide them even more, I'm going to subdivide here one more. And I choose one of those points in the middle that I've added and pressed Alt-S. I can start creating kind of like a different shape, but this is too big, right? I want something a little smaller. So I'll subdivide even more. Select these two, put a little subdivision here. Try again, maybe this down, and this is looking much better for me already. The reason why I'm keeping a space in the middle, because if you want, you could just take this and just move it all the way down and merge those together. But the reason why I don't is because for me, for this specific art style, what I'd like to have is a magical sphere as like an arrow rest in between. So that's why I'm leaving some space. But what I'd like to do is just take these two, put them down here, move them down on the z-axis. They're a little closer. And there we go. This is looking a little nicer. I can modify the curve a little more. And this is the beauty of using curves rather than objects, or like rather than using normal geometry. It's because you can modify your curves without having to play with edges and faces and everything. So that's the beauty of having to play here with curves instead. And once you'll be ready, I'll show you how to convert those curves into meshes where you can rig them and UV edit them and everything else. But for now, we're using our curves here to create the shape that we want. And like this. So I think this is looking pretty nice. What I'd like to do just before I go into and convert them into a mesh, I want to add the two other elements that I want for this bow, which is going to be the bowstring and the magical sphere arrow rest. So this will allow me to gauge whether or not the bow is the correct or has the correct proportions. So what I'm going to do here for the bowstring is going to be very simple. Let's go to mesh. I can choose like a plane, for example. Go into edit mode, rotate it on 90 degrees, and I could just delete two vertices right here, and I'm left with a bowstring, and just scale it up, just like this. The bow feels a little too short, so I'm gonna take the bowstring and I'm gonna move it backwards like this. This looks nice. And then I'm gonna take those 2 points here and move it like this to extend the bow a little more. This makes more sense to me. Before it felt a little too short. I'm gonna still scale this down a little bit like this. And what I'll do for the bowstring, I'm gonna take what I've just created, the plane here. I'm gonna, well, first of all, rename it. So I'm gonna rename it from plane to bowstring. And then I'm going to right click, convert to curve. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it'll be a lot easier to bevel it and give it a shape. So from it going from one simple edge to, if I go to data properties here, bevel, round, and just choose a depth. There we go, just like this. There's a lot of different ways to do this. You can literally just, for example, add in a, I don't know, like a cylinder, and then, you know, scale it down and up if you want. I mean, that's a possibility as well. But to me, I like to do it this way instead. And so now I got myself a bowstring, and then what you can do is play here with the depth if you want it to be, you know, skinnier or fatter. That'll be up to you. But typically a string is very skinny. So I'll put it up like this. This is nice. And you can always take a moment as well to just move around here in your viewport and see if this looks good or not. You can always just remove the overlays to have a better look, so not have the grid or everything else. The way I do it is you could go, if you want to here, viewport overlays, and let's see, and turn it off essentially. What I've done is right click and I gave it a shortcut, and the shortcut is Shift Q, but you can give it whatever shortcut you prefer. Now what I want to do is add in a sphere right here that I'll be using as a magical arrow rest. But what I'll be doing first is there's just too many vertices on this sphere. It's not necessary. So I'll be cutting those in half. So segments 32, I'll cut that in half to 16. And then the ring is 16, I'll cut that down to 8. There we go. And if I need it to be smoother, I'll just add a subdivision modifier afterwards. It won't be too necessary. But for now, this is perfect. In edit mode, I'll just scale it down and make sure it fits right between the bow here. And there we go. So this is looking nice to me. This is what the bow will look like for now. So this is the bow, this is the bowstring, and then this sphere, we'll rename it to, arrow rest. Perfect. Now, moving forward, just before I convert that, well, I actually can convert it to a mesh right now if I wanted to, actually. So what I could do is, you know what? I'll remove the subdivision, or maybe just add one level. One level is sufficient. Apply. Okay, I can't apply the subdivision. Okay, no worries at all. Why not? Apply. Cannot apply constructive modifiers on curve. Convert curve to mesh in order to apply. No problem. So what I'll do is I'll just choose the bow, right click, convert to mesh. And there we go. Everything applies off the bat. And this will be my curve, my bow. But it feels like there's just too much geometry. So you know what? I'll undo until it is still a curve. I will remove the subdivision. And if I go to my curve data properties here, I can play with resolution preview. Okay, now this is way too low res. Because again, most of you will probably use this, let's say, for like a game asset. For game assets, you want to optimize your geometry as much as possible. Get the least amount of polygons as much as possible so the game can run as good as possible. Or if you're using this for an animation, again, for your animation files, you want to also always optimize to have the least amount of polygons as possible. I think this is still a little too poly. Maybe if I cut it down to 6. So we were at 12. This was 12, but I'll cut it down to 6. And the reason why I'm confident in cutting it down, because afterwards, if I want it to look smoother, I can add a subdivision modifier. But at its base, I really want to make sure that the mesh here looks as low poly as possible, while at the same time having it look acceptable. And to me, this is the perfect balance between low poly and acceptable. So I'm going to, let's see here, right click, convert mesh, and there we go. Off the bat, it looks a lot better, just like that. And what I can do here is I can, let's see here, give it a subdivision, and see, we regain the soft look that we wanted, the soft curves that we wanted, by adding a subdivision modifier. But for now, it won't be necessary. We can keep it as is. We'll add it in later. Now what I like to do is focus on the arrow. So I can have I have a collection here that I can name as bow. If I turn it off, all the bow objects are in the correct collection. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the bow collection, add in a new one called arrow. And from here, we can create a new arrow. So the base shape for the arrow will be a cylinder that I'm going to add here. I'm just going to change the vertices from 32 all the way down to 8. We can turn this into an octagon. And what I'd like to do for the moment is to remove the top and bottom faces. It won't be necessary. There we go. And I'm going to select, again, I'm currently in edit mode, rotate it as such, Alt S to make it thinner. This will be like a glass shard frost arrow. And I'm going to scale it up here on the x-axis. This is good enough. Okay, this will be the total length of my arrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a loop cut with Control+R, place it, move it forward like this, and then press Control-B to bevel it. So now when I bevel it, I'll have 2 loop cuts. And the reason why is because this will be the starting point of the arrow tip. And then I'm going to use the second one to scale it up like this. And I'm going to take the tip and scale it down as much as possible. And I can play with it by making it longer or shorter, depending on your style. And what I like to do here is, because this is just way too sharp, I'm going to select this, the initial edge loop that we created, Control-B, and let's see, I think this is good. There we go. So this is like a nice curved shape into the arrow tip right here. This is nice. And what I like to do for here is maybe I'm going to add another, for the end, I'm going to add another curve edge loop. Put it here, take the end and just a little bit scale it up, just a tiny bit, because we're going to be adding in frost feathers at the end there. And this is nice. Okay. Let's take a look. Okay. All right, so let's see now what we're going to do for the arrow, the frost arrows. What I'm thinking, I'm going to experiment a little, but I'm going to add in another circle. I think by default it should be, no, it goes back to 32. Changing from 32 vertices to 8. I think 8 should be sufficient, or maybe 6. I think 6 is good. I'm going to bring it here. I'm going to rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And what I'd like to do is scale it down like this. Scale it all the way down here like this. And from top view, I'm going to extrude. There we go. I'm going to add an edge loop like such. Take the edge loop at the end here, bring it down, take the one here, break it down. And essentially what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create a kind of crystal feather shape that I can duplicate to make it look nice and acceptable. So this here should be scaled all the way down. And I can notice, I think the normals are inverted. So I'm going to select all, Shift N to recalculate normals. And now the normals are correct. Perfect. Okay. So now we get this glass shard effect. See, you can use that with just a simple curve that we sort of squash down. And now we get this sort of frost feather here. This will be the base of it. I'm going to scale this down just a little more. Move it up. This is nice. Perfect. I'm going to start putting in names too. It's always important that you put names when it comes to your object so you don't get lost in your scene afterwards. So this one will be called the, let's see here. This will be called rename to arrow. And this will be renamed to arrow feather. .001 because we're going to have so many of them, so might as well start with 001 because Blender will automatically add 002, 003, and so on. See, if I duplicate it, now this one is 002, this one is 001. Okay, perfect. It's a little too big though. I feel like it's a little too big, so I can go in edit mode, select all. And in edit mode, object mode, scale it down just like this. Beautiful. So now what I'm going to do is take the arrow feather, duplicate it, rotate it on its x-axis, rotate it 90 degrees. Let's see. What if we move it upward like this, scale it down, duplicate it, move it on the x-axis forward, rotate it, make it a little longer maybe. Okay, I'll take the two of them, scale them upwards, move them up just like this. And maybe you've guessed it already, but we're going to take those two and add a mirror modifier because I want them to look the same below as well. So what I'll do is I'll begin with this one, go to the modifier menu, generate mirror, but on, okay, see, it's mirroring, but not really correctly. And the reason why is because the rotation here, the rotation is set to 90 degrees on x-axis and on the y-axis at 29.87 degrees. The rotation has to be applied. When it's applied, And when you apply rotation, it sets back to 0 and the mirroring should work correctly. So I'm going to select my shard here, my arrow feather, Control A, apply rotation, and now it's set correctly. I just have to change the axis. And as you can notice here, its transform values reset down back to 0 degrees. So there we go. If I choose Z or Z, it'll be mirrored correctly. I'm going to do the same thing here. Control A, apply rotation, add modifier, generate mirror on the Z axis, and there we go. What I'd like to do is take this, duplicate it, right click to put it back in its place, rotate X 90 degrees, boom. As you can see, it's already mirrored correctly here because it's still set to Z, but the Z is rotated to 90 degrees. If you apply the rotation, it'll be done incorrectly, and now you'll have to choose Y instead of Z. Duplicate, same thing, scale it up, move it up here like this. And you can scale it up a little bit more too if you want. We can go into edit mode and play with the rotation if you want, but I don't know, I don't think. What I'll do instead is I'll delete it. I'll duplicate the vertical one instead. Right click to go back in its place, rotate X 90 degrees, just like that. And then I'll apply rotation and reset the mirror, disable Z and put Y. And there we go. We got ourselves some glass or frosty feathers here. I can make this maybe a little longer on the x-axis because that's the centerpiece. Perfect. I can take this as well. Maybe scale it up a little more. Scale this one up a little more. There we go. And just like that, we got ourselves glass shards. And now what I want to do is because it's kind of awkward the way it just comes out of the mesh here. So what I'll be doing is, let's see, I'm going to add a torus, reduce its segments, some 48. Let's put, I think 8 is fine. And then the minor segments, I think 6 is perfectly fine. Rotate it on the y-axis like such. Scale it down like this. It'll create some sort of a limiter, or there we go. Something like a holder. There we go. Kind of feels like it makes more sense now. And what I could do is use Alt-S to make it fatter or thinner. Just like this. And let's give it a name. Let's name it Arrow Ring, just to make it simple. So Arrow Ring dot, let's see, 001, because I'd like to add another one. Shift D, bring it forward and just putting it here. Again, it creates some sort of spacer limiter. Not a spacer, but more like a limiter, which I like a lot. There we go. Just like that. Let's see. Now let's bring back the bow. And it feels like the arrow is a little too long for the bow. Unless that's your style, that's fine. It depends on what your, the goal is here. Sometimes you can go for stylistically and add in more. But what I'd like to do is just increase the tip here. Tip length a little more. It feels like it hurts more if you hit somebody with that. But I'd like to make the arrow itself a little shorter. So if I close everything, if I just hide the bow collection, keep only the arrow one up. If I go global axis, median point, and scale it down. I don't like, actually, no. What I'd like to do rather is make this a little shorter. So the way to do the rather than, because I like the fact that the arrow the feathers, the ice feathers at the end are long enough. It's just the arrow shaft itself is a little too long. So I'm just going to select those edges. Let's see, is it going to work? Yeah, see, and just by moving this, so rather than scaling, we're just moving those. So this and this, these two tips, move those forward. Is this, yeah, this is a little bit better. And then take these in object mode and just move them forward like this. And we forgot the ring too. Okay, like this, move those forward. Like this, and now that makes more sense. And now we got the bow and the arrow. The arrow is still a little long, but it's okay because this is stylized. It's okay if it looks that way. But at this point, we got our main objects made. So we got the arrow done and we got the bow done. Now what we want to do is start working on shading. That'll be our next step. So what I'll do is I'll hide the arrow and start working with the bow. And then we'll move on to the arrow. So what I'll do first of all is I'll just split my screen here. The second part, I'm going to turn this into the shader editor. So as I'm modifying the shaders, I can see what's happening in real time. So let's see here. We're going to begin with the bow, and we're going to give it a modifier, and we're going to name the modifier very simply bow. And we're going to do a few things to set up our Blender file correctly. First of all, of course, we have to go into either shading or material preview here. But before we even do this, let's change from cycles to Eevee, because we're not using cycles today. We're only going to be using Eevee, which is much better for stylistic renders. And what I'm going to do afterwards, very soon, I'm going to show you how to change your color management from Filmic to standard, but I'll just do it in a second because I want you to see the difference with the color saturation and to show you the reason why we're doing this. So we got our, by default, a principled BSDF. If you play with the principled BSDF values here, it'll affect your bow itself, but we don't want to use the principled BSDF. We want to use emission. Typically, when it comes down to stylized, effects or stylized renders in Blender, I always like to go with Eevee. Within the emission shader. So Shift A in the shader tab, we're going to type in emission and plug in the emission because we don't want it to react to light or whatever. And the first thing that I want to do when I'm experimenting for the frost is I want to be able to put in multiple different hues of blue. So the way I'm going to do this is by adding in a Voronoi texture, connecting the color socket into a color ramp node, and the color ramp node is going to go into the emission shader here. So as you can see, this is the effect that we get right now, but the Voronoi effect that we get is very sharp. There's no gradient at all. It's very sharp. So what I'll be doing instead is switching from F1 to smooth F1. And all of a sudden, as you can see, we're getting a smoother blend between the Voronoi. So again, this is F1. This is smooth F1. You can also play if you want with the Manhattan, Chebyshev, or Minkowski. The different shapes essentially, and then you can play with the smoothness here, play with the exponent. This looks nice actually. I kind of like it. Lower the exponent a little, but I think I might go for either Manhattan or Chebyshev. I'm not sure. I'll go for Manhattan for now. See what happens later. But essentially, what I'm trying to do here is play with the scale a little more. There we go. I'm giving these abstract colors to the bow. And what I'm going to do is add in just very quickly 2 hues of blue. So let's go with a light blue at first and then a darker blue at the bottom here. Something along these lines. This is where I'll show you how to switch from filmic to standard. So this is filmic colors. This is standard. As you can see, standard is a lot more vibrant when it comes to colors. So once more, sorry, I clicked on Aces standard. So standard, filmic, standard, filmic. And the reason why I prefer to go for standard is when it comes to stylized renders, again, you want to go with very much saturated colors. Again, if that's your stylistic choice. But typically, you want to go for saturated and more vibrant colors. So now already this looks a bit more ice-like because of the blue hues. But what I want to do is add just a shade of white here. A little bit because it's so cold that it's almost white. Keep saturation off to 0. And there we go. See, you're kind of like painting your bow here, but procedurally through the Voronoi texture. There we go. Now, to me, this is insufficient. Typically, when it comes to stylized ice, there's always these sort of shards in between. So in order to simulate that, what we're going to do is we're going to mix what we've just done with the colors, but also with another Voronoi type of texture. And I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just going to switch from linear to ease here. I want the blend to be a bit smoother. Or even B-spline. I prefer B-spline even better. Darker blues, the medium blues. There we go. And the white. Beautiful. Okay, now to add in a second layer to our ice, I'm going to add in another Voronoi texture. I'm going to add in, just duplicate the color ramp, and then when I'm selecting it, hitting backspace, it'll bring it back to its default state, which is black and white linear blend. I'm going to go, this time instead of color, I'm going to go for distance, put it here, and I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on the color ramp here, so I can only focus on what I'm working on here, ignoring the other Voronoi blue setup and just focus on the Voronoi texture group that I'm going to be working on right now. I'm going to switch from F1 to distance to edge, and off the bat, you're seeing that it's very much a different kind of Voronoi effect. I'm just going to invert the colors here. Okay, there we go. And what if I play with the scale? There we go. You can immediately kind of see what I'm going for here. You're getting these separation shards here that you're getting typically with ice. And what if I put this to ease? Just like this. B-spline. Oh, B-spline is nice because B-spline offers a kind of gradient here that it almost looks like it's frosted around the edges, which I like a lot. But I feel like the scale of the edges is too small, so I'm going to increase it just a little more here. We can add a bit of detail if we want. And the detail, see off the bat, Blender's giving you this frosty look. So see, you can get this for free. If you play with the lacunarity value here, you can even add in a little more detail. And what we want to do is blend the blue colors that we've added alongside the sort of ice frosty separation effect here together. And the way to do this is by adding a node called a mix color node. Place it in between here. I'm going to connect my second Voronoi texture group to B. And then if I bring back emission, as you can see now they're mixed together. And if I go factor to 1, I get just the color. If I go factor to 0, I only get the color. If I go factor to 1, I only get the frosty divided effect. I want to blend these two together. And Blender gives you a lot of options to blend these two together, starting with darken. So I'm going to click on darken, then hit Control, and then scroll down the wheel to see what kind of effect what kind of blend effect do I prefer most? So we're going to start with darken, multiply, nope, color burn, no, lighten, not really, screen, maybe screen, color dodge, ooh, color dodge looks nice because you got the white here and then the blue gradient here. That's not too bad. Add, overlay, ooh, overlay doesn't look that bad. Soft light, linear light, difference, exclusion, divide, hue doesn't affect really, saturation not really, value not too much, and we're back to mix. So that's the cycle. I think soft light looks the best to me. I like soft light. Maybe color dodge. A lot of good choices. I think I'll go with soft light though, because I don't lose a lot of the blue hues that I've added. And what I can do, I can still modify, add a bit more of the white like this here. And again, what I'm doing here, you could always modify and customize to your own liking, depending on what you're doing with your version of the frost bow or whatever bow you're using. I'm just gonna take the dark blue here and move it up just like this. All right, this looks nice. Nice, beautiful. For now, we're done with the bow. I'm gonna maybe give it a subdivision modifier just to see what it looks like when it's a little curvier. Okay. Not bad. The string, because it's like this magical, very thin string, what I'd like to do here is it's still a curve, so we can still play with how thin it is. I'm just simply going to give it a new material and just give it an emission node and give it a color. So new material, we're going to name this bowstring. Add an emission node. This is in white. Let's give it like just like a light blue. We'll give it a bloom effect later. Okay. And maybe increase the strength just a little bit. Maybe like to like 2. Okay. And now we're gonna work with the arrow holder here, the sphere. So we're gonna give it a new material. Name it arrow rest. Delete the principal BSDF, and we're going to add in a layer weight node. And I'll have a very special effect I'll show you in a moment. And we're going to take its facing socket connected to a color ramp node, just like this. And this is what you get. Let me shade smooth it and maybe add a subdivision modifier with control 1. Okay. What is black is in the center. What is white is like the rim color. And this is consistent from any angle you look at it from. And in my case, what I'd like to do is a lighter blue in the core and a darker blue around it. So let's say light blue here, darker blue here, like this. Change it to maybe B-spline. Darker blue like this. And then maybe add like just a pure white. That's going to be let's try to make it subtle. Because like the whiter it is, the more pure the frost is, something like that, you know? And let's bring this dark blue a little bit more forward like this. I like the effect. I just don't really like this choice of blue. There we go. That fits it a lot more. Perfect. We got the bow done. Now we can move on to the arrow. What I could do to save some time is, because I want the arrow to, because it's a magical arrow, right? So I want it to look very consistent with its material. I want it to look magical, so I want it to look very unique, very uniform. So what I can do is, instead of starting from scratch, I could use the bow shading material that I've created as a base. So I'm going to select the the arrow object, then shift click on the bow object here, Control L, link materials. And now the arrow has the same bow as the same material as the bow. Another way to do it, if I undo, is just select the arrow object, and in materials, instead of new, select from the menu here, bow. And now it has a very similar, it has the same shading material as the bow. What I'll be doing now is, because if I modify the bow, the arrow, it'll modify the bow as well. I don't want that. I want it to be separate. So I want to, in other words, create a duplicate. So where it says 3 here, I'm going to click on it, and it's going to create a duplicate. And I'm going to name, instead of bow.001, I'm going to name it arrow. There we go. And essentially what I wanted is I want it to look as bright as possible. So what I'll do here is add a hue saturation value node between the color ramp and the mix color node here, and increase the value more. Or sorry, you know what we're going to do instead is maybe if we put it at the end. So the hue saturation, instead of it between here, it'll be after the mixed color node. Maybe that's a better choice. And let me try again. Increase, there we go. Increase, playing with a little bit with the saturation. Increase the value a little more. Maybe more saturation, a little less. Okay. Let's just quickly give it a try with let's give the other arrow objects the same material. Like I said, I want it to look as uniform as possible, and see what kind of effect are we getting here. It's a start, but it's far from perfect. If I scale this up more, scale this down more. Okay, so scaling down the colors is good. I want to scale down that effect as well. The eyes divide effect more. Okay, maybe if you give a bit more saturation, maybe. Okay. All right. For now, it's good enough for me, but I'm going to play with the compositor node right now to see with the glare effect, with the bloom, if it'll work or not. So what I'm going to do here is I duplicated the screen one more time, and instead of shading, I'm going to go for compositor. And in compositor, very simply, I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to add in a glare node here. Now you don't see probably any difference. In order to see a difference, you need to go into your viewport, go in the arrow here for shading, and where it says compositor, click on always. Now you get whatever effect you put in the compositor node, it will show directly into your viewport. So what I want to do first of all is change the glare from streaks to bloom. Okay. And whatever I want to have that bloom effect, I will increase its emission strength. I'm going to start with the arrow. The arrow is currently set to 1. I want to put it to 2. Now it's a lot shinier. If I take a look at the bow here, no, I want it to contrast with the arrow. So I'll keep it to maybe not 1, but go to 1.2, just to give a little bit of a bloom effect. And the string, I want to give it more. Maybe 6. I like that. But the color could be a bit more saturated. Let's see. Okay, this is good. Don't forget, before I forget to, just converting the bowstring from curve to mesh. We don't need it to be a curve anymore. And let me just play a little bit with its colors here. There we go. We can always remove the overlay to get a look and then get a sense of what this looks like. I want to take a moment to maybe scale this up a little more. I don't need it to be those division lines to be too strong. Okay, this is better. Like this. This is my arrow. And obviously the arrow rest is supposed to, I think I want it to be also stronger. I'm going to add an emission node here and increase the strength as well. So see, when you start playing with the compositor, it motivates you to change the shading as well, because you want your shading to work according to the compositor. So adding in colors, removing in colors. There we go. If we go into render, where we can change the world to almost pitch black or very dark gray, okay. This is what we're getting. This is your frost bow, this is your frost arrow, and this is your arrow holder. Okay. One thing I haven't done is just checking something very quickly. Okay, no, it's not too bad when it comes down to... Okay, no, I like this, looks nice and shading. This looks nice like this. Perfect. Now, the last effect that I want to do and show you, I want to take this a little further and I want to show you how to add some sort of frost magical effect to your arrow. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is. So what I'll do is I'm gonna, let's see, go into the, still in the arrow collection, add a circle. As you can see, the circle is a 6 vertex, so like a hexagon. And I'm going to move it forward here to the tip of the arrow. And let's see here, I'm going to rotate it on the y-axis, 90 degrees. Okay, and I'm just for a moment going to go back to my viewport shading here. I'm going to scale this down in edit mode. Extrude it forward on the x-axis. Add a loop cut, move it forward, increase it. Always recalculate normals just in case, because with circles sometimes it can be a little annoying. Very nice. I'm going to scale this down even more. Move this forward. Do I want to turn maybe 3 like this? Okay. This is going to be the base shape for our arrow VFX. So arrow VFX. And now what I want to do is I want to go into viewport shading, give it a new material, call it arrow VFX, and I'm going to delete the principled BSDF. And before adding the emission node, I'm going to add something called the mix shader node, because I want transparency, right? So I'm going to take the mix shader node, plug it into my material output surface point, and I'm going to add in a transparent node, plug it here on the top green shader point, and add in an emission node at the bottom here. Now it's very noisy. It looks very annoying. So what I'm going to do is in the shading tab, press N to open up the options tab here and change from vithered to blended. So again, press on N in your tabs here, go to options And in the render method, change it from dithered to blended. So blended is what you want. And then once you're done, press N again to give you more space to view. So very simple. If you put the factor down to 0, transparent 100%. If you put the factor to 1, you're opaque 100%. And we can use this setup to create VFX. So what I can do here very quickly, I'm going to just add a Voronoi texture. I'm going to press Control T to give it a texture coordinate mapping node to it. If you press Control T and that doesn't happen, just make sure to, if you go to your preferences here, your add-on menu, always make sure to have the Node Wrangler add-on. So this is super important so that when you press Control plus D, the texture coordinate mapping node automatically appear in your shading tab and connect to the Voronoi texture. So I'm going to go distance connected to a color ramp node here and can put the color ramp here to factor and whatever is black. So if I just focus on the color ramp here by clicking Control Shift click, whatever is black here is going to end up being transparent, and whatever is white is going to end up becoming opaque. So if I go back to the mixed shaders, you can immediately see what I mean. What is black is going to be invisible. What is white is going to be visible, opaque. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it up a little more. And as you can see immediately, if you start playing here, it creates some sort of effect. What I want is a spiral of sorts. So first, before I do this, I'm going to add in a subdivision modifier because I want more vertices, more polygons to play with. Then I'm going to add in the form. If you go into the form, a simple deform modifier. And I'm going to twist it on the Z axis. And the more I twist, as you can see, the more I twist, and let me just make this easier to see, it gives off this spiral effect. So as you can see here, the more I twist, the more the spiral effect works. And if I start playing with the mapping node's location Z value, it's almost as if there's this aura coming out of the tip of the arrow, which is really, really cool. But what we need is to add a second subdivision node that comes right after the simple deform node to further smooth in or smooth out the effect. So if I do this, doesn't seem to be working. Why is that? Okay, what if I delete the second subdivision and just smooth out? Okay, you know what? To make it even simpler, forget what I just said. Just increase the level of your initial subdivision. It'll be simpler this way. Look at, and there we go. What we can also do is maybe we can scale, play with the scale here of the Voronoi so that when we, let's see, I want to make it a little longer. There we go. So they look like strands more and more. We can even play with the X scale. If you play it, they become smaller strands, which is kind of cool. And so what I want to do is change linear to maybe B-spline. No, not really. Maybe to ease. Yeah, ease is cool. Okay. And there's one thing that you'll notice. So first, let me put in an animation here to show you what I mean. So the Z location is what allows it to move forward or backward. So I'm going to click here, put hashtag frame / I don't know, 48. It gives off an automatic automation. It's a little slow, so maybe 24 instead of 48. The lower the number, the faster it's supposed to be. A little too fast. 36, let's try 36. Okay, 36 is a happy medium. But you'll notice there's a problem here, and that is the cutoff is very sharp here. And you want a gradient cutoff, not a, not a sharp cutoff like we can see here. So what we're going to do very simply is we're going to add in a gradient node to our scene, Control plus T as always, and we're going to connect it color to color ramp. Make sure your gradient texture is set to linear, by the way. Control Shift click on color ramp to see what we're doing. Okay, so it's following the curve of the shape, which I don't want. I want like an actual, like a linear cutoff. So like this, right? But I want it to be rotated. I'll show you how I did this. So by default, when you do Control plus T, it adds in the generated, it's connected through the generated positions here. For this particular effect, for the gradient, I don't want that, because if I start playing with the gradient, it follows the spiral shape, which I don't want. What I want instead is to use the object, because object will ignore your modifiers. And what I want is to create a gradient cutoff for transparency, because don't forget, what is black is invisible and what is white is visible. So what I want is, I want like a grayscale value towards the end of that shape, so that the aura, the fire, or the frost, whatever you want to call it, is able to gradually get cut off as it gets towards that point of the geometry. So very simply, connect it from object into your mapping node, and then rotate it on the Y axis to 90 degrees. And then, let's see here, we can bring it through the X location, we can bring it closer to here. Let me change it from linear to, on the color ramp node, from linear to ease, maybe. Yeah, that's good. Linear to ease. And now, let's see here. If I add a mix color node, plug these two in together like this, into the mix shader, I'm going to go for maybe multiply. And there we go. And as you can see, if I play with the black slider, what is going to be black is going to be transparent. What is going to be white is going to be visible. So by adding a grayscale here, I create a softer fall off for that effect. So if I play with this here, I can create how short or long it is. Looks good to me. I'm just going to remove the scale here. I'm going to make them a little thicker like this. Perfect. And I also, I want a color. I don't want it to be white. I want it to have color to this effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the gradient node group that I used, select all of it from the texture coordinate all the way to the color ramp, Shift D to duplicate. And because it's using the horizontal gradient that I want, like here, but instead of black and white, I want light blue to darker blue. So I'm going to take this, plug it into my emission node. And if I go back to my mix shader view, start playing with the colors here. So let's say I want to go from light blue to a darker blue. And then I'm going to just move this forward like this. Very nice. And now, as you can see, I can play with the color, and if I play with the emission strength, it becomes stronger thanks to the bloom effect. So if I go here, just like that, look at this. We get an actual, let me just, let's see if I can play with the colors a little more. This is maybe a little too dark blue. Like this is nice. And maybe add like a white, like a sharper white. Not too white, just like a lighter blue with a higher value. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. I can increase the scale or decrease the scale to make bigger strands. It's up to you, however you prefer that effect to look like. But as you can see, this now creates some sort of effect, you know, like your arrow has that special magical aura to it. And let's see here, is there anything else that we can do? I think that's pretty much it. If I give it a bit more detail, a bit more lacunarity, sorry. Gives it a bit more detail. You can even play, if the speed is too much, you can play with the value here. If I'm just going to decrease the scale though. There we go. It's up to you to choose whatever effect you prefer. At the end of the day, it's whatever you feel most comfortable with. There we go. This is too much. Okay. This is a little bit better. All right, so I can play this all day long. All right, so this is it. This is how you create a frost bow and arrow asset in Blender. As you can see, the process is very simple. You go from modeling to shading and then to compositing. What's very important is always to know how to create the base shapes. So for example, for the bow, it was a lot smarter to use your curves because you can create these smooth curve shapes a lot easier. For the arrow, you simply create a cylinder and then you just scale it up. And then with very basic shapes, you can start building complex shapes like, you know, like for example, the frost arrow here. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.